Hello friends, it is well said by Francis Bacon that reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, writing an exact man, telling us the importance of reading, discussion and writing in the learning process. I am Chandrasekhar Hasse. As a beginning of the learning of third lesson from the syllabus of 12th standard English textbook, the Cop and the Anthem, let's read the lesson attentively. Before going to the lesson, let's have an introduction of the author, O. Henry. The span of life of O. Henry is 1862 to 1910. William Sidney Porter, an American writer, is better known by his pen name O. Henry. He was a voracious reader since childhood. He started a humorous weekly, The Rolling Stone, and when the venture failed, he joined the Houston Post as a reporter, columnist, and occasional cartoonist. The story The Cop and the Anthem is one of O. Henry's well-known stories. To describe his style of writing, people have often used the term smile and tears, which implies his twisted way of thoughts and endings in almost every story. In this story, the main character, Soapy, is a vagabond and a person with criminal background. He makes different plans to re-enter the prison as he has no shelter to protect himself from the severe winter. The story ends in an unexpected way. O. Henry has depicted Soapy's futile attempts to get arrested in a very humorous way. The Cop and the Anthem is about freedom and confinement. Initially, Soapy feels that there is freedom from miseries and worries in confinement, that is prison. The notes of Anthem transform him from within and he resolves to work hard. Soapy faces the irony of fate as the moment he realizes the real freedom lies in a virtuous life, he is taken into confinement. Let's read the story, dear friends, The Cop and the Anthem. Soapy left his bench and strolled out of the square and across the level sea of asphalt where Broadway and Fifth Avenue flow together. Up Broadway, he turned and stopped at a luxurious cafe. Soapy had confidence in himself from the lowest button of his vest upward. He was shaven and his coat was trim and neat. Black bow had been presented to him by a lady missionary on Thanksgiving Day. If only he could reach a table in the restaurant unsuspected, success would be his. The portion of him that would show above the table would raise no doubt in the waiter's mind. A roasted mallard duck, thought Soapy, would be about the thing, with a bottle of wine and then some cheese, a cup of coffee and a cigar. $1 for the cigar would be enough. The total would not be so high as to call forth any extreme of revenge from the cafe management, and yet the meat would leave him filled and happy for the journey to his winter island. But as Soapy set foot inside the restaurant door, the head waiter's eye fell upon his tattered trousers and decadent shoes. Strong and ready hands turned him, convey him in silence and haste to the sidewalk and averted the ignoble fate of the menaced mallard. Soapy turned up Broadway. It seemed that his route to the coveted island was not to be an easy one. Some other way of entering the limbo must be devised. At a corner of 6th Avenue, electric lights and cunningly displayed wires behind plate glass made a shop window attractive. Soapy took a stone and dashed it through the glass. People came running round the corner, a policeman in the lead. Soapy stood still with his hands in his pockets and smiled at the sight of brass buttons. "Where is the man that done that?" inquired the officer agitatedly. "Don't you think that I might have had something to do with it?" said Soapy, with a friendly voice, as one greets good fortune. The policeman refused to accept Soapy even as a clue. Men who smash windows do not remain to chat with the police. They take to their heels. The policeman saw a man halfway down the block running to catch a car. With a drawn club, he joined in the pursuit. Soapy, with disgust in his heart, drifted along, twice unsuccessful. On the opposite side of the street was a restaurant of no great pretensions. It catered to large appetites and modest purses. Its crockery and atmosphere were thick, its soup and napery thin. Into this place Soapy betook himself without challenge. At a table he sat and consumed beef steak, flapjacks, donuts and pie. And then he told the waiter the fact that the minutest coin and himself were total strangers. "Now get busy and call a cop," said Soapy, "and don't keep a gentleman waiting." No cop for you," said the waiter, with a voice like butter cakes and an eye like the cherry in the Manhattan cocktail. "Hey, Khan!" Neatly upon his left ear, on the callous pavement, two waiters pitched Soapy. He arose, joint by joint, as a carpenter's rule opens, and dusted his clothes. Arrest seems now but an elusive dream. The island seemed very far away. The policeman who stood before a drugstore two doors away laughed and walked down the street. Soapy was seized with a sudden fear that some dreadful enchantment had rendered him immune to arrest. He was in a state of panic, and when he came upon the another policeman laughing grandly in front of a glittering theatre, he caught at the immediate straw of disorderly conduct. On the sidewalk, Soapy began to yell, drunken, gibberish at the top of his harsh voice. He danced, howled, raved, and otherwise disturbed the skies. The policeman merely twirled his club, turned his back to Soapy, and remarked to a citizen, "It's one of them lads, celebrating the goose egg they gave to the Hartford College. Noisy, but no harm. We have instructed to let them be." Disconsolate, Soapy stopped his unveiling racket. Would never a policeman lay hands on him? In his fancy, the island seems an unattainable Arcadia. He buttoned his thin coat against the chilling wind. In a cigar store, he saw a well-dressed man lighting a cigar at the swinging light. He had set his silk umbrella by the door on entering. Soapy stepped inside, grabbed the umbrella, and sauntered off with it slowly. The man at the cigar light followed hastily. "My umbrella," he said sternly. "Oh, is it?" sneered Soapy, adding insult to petty larceny. "Well, why don't you call a policeman? I took it, your umbrella. Why don't you call a cop? There stands one on the corner." The umbrella owner slowed his steps. Soapy did likewise, with a premonition that luck would again run against him. The policeman eyed at the two curiously. "Of course," said the umbrella man. "Well, you know how these mistakes occur if it's your umbrella. I hope you shall excuse me. I picked it up this morning in a restaurant. If you recognize it as yours, why, I hope you shall." "Of course it's mine," said Soapy savagely. The ex-umbrella man retreated. The policeman hurried to assist a tall blonde in an opera cloak across the street in front of a streetcar that was approaching 2 blocks away. Soapy walked eastward through a street damaged by improvements. He hurled the umbrella angrily into an excavation. He muttered against the men who wear helmets and carry clubs. Because he wanted to fall into their clutches, they seemed to regard him as a king who could do nothing wrong. At length, Soapy reached one of the avenues to the east where the glitter and turmoil was but faint. He dragged himself towards Madison Square, for the homing instinct survives even when the home is a park bench. But on an unusually quiet corner, Sophie came to a standstill. Here was an old church, quaint and rambling and gabbled. Through one violet stained window, a soft light glowed, where no doubt the organist loitered over the keys, making sure of his mastery of the coming Sabbath anthem. For there drifted out to Sophie's ears sweet music that caught and held him transfixed against the convulsions of the iron fence. The moon was above, full and radiant. Vehicles and pedestrians were few. Sparrows tweeted sleepily in the eaves, or a little while the scene might have been a country churchyard. And the anthem that the organist played cemented Soapy to the iron fence, for he had known it well in the days when his life contains such things as mothers and rogues and ambitions and friends and immaculate thoughts and colors. The conjunction of Soapy's receptive state of mind and the influences about the old church brought a sudden and wonderful change in his soul. He viewed with rising horror the pit into which he had tumbled. The degraded days, unworthy desires, dead hopes, wrecked faculties, and base motives that made up his existence. And also, in a moment, his heart responded thrillingly to this strange mood. A strong impulse moved him to battle with his disparate fact. He would pull himself out of the mire and would make a man himself again. He would conquer the evil that had enslaved him. There was time he was young yet. He would resurrect his old eager ambitions and pursue them without faltering. Those solemn but sweet organ notes had set up a revolution in him. Tomorrow he would go into the roaring downtown district and find work. A fur importer had once offered him a place as driver. He would be somebody in the world. He would. Sophie felt a hand laid on arm. He looked quickly around into the impassive face of a policeman. "What are you doing here?" asked the officer. "Nothing," said Sophie. "Then come along," said the policeman. 3 months on the island, said the magistrate in the police court the next morning.